Francis, our top story, pressure mounting on the Israeli government to make a deal. Pressure both internationally and domestically, with family members of some of the more than 130 hostages still being kept in the tunnels of Gaza, choosing to speak up even more now than ever before. They're asking the world to watch the videos that were released by Hamas of 3 of the hostages in hopes to force the government into a deal. Here's more from senior correspondent Bianca Zanini.
The Israeli government must make a choice between the war and getting the hostages back home. That's the stark message from some of the families of the captives held by Hamas in Gaza.
I am convinced that all the people of Israel and the nations of the world want to see an end to the bloodshed and the end of the suffering of your people. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the cabinet, please make any deal. Make any deal. Every deal is doable. I'm asking you to make a decision now. Now.
Some family members released a statement saying that Israel's military pressure in Gaza has failed. This after Hamas released a video of 2 hostages over the weekend as part of their psychological warfare. Families once asking the media not to show the videos now want Israeli leaders and the whole world to see, in hopes that it will force the government into a deal.
אני נמצא פה בשבי החמאס כבר 202 יום.
אנחנו פה נמצאים בסכנה, יש הפצצות, וזה מלחיץ ומפחיד. וזה נמשך כבר הרבה מאוד זמן.
Initially, families of the hostages tried to keep politics out of their plight to get their loved ones home. A little over a month into the war, a temporary ceasefire resulted in the release of over 100 hostages. But since then, the war in Gaza has continued. But attempts to rescue or negotiate a new deal have proven unfruitful, and the families have had enough, speaking up like never before.
Watching my father today just reiterates that we must reach a deal as fast as possible and bring them all home. I demand that the leaders of this country watch this video and imagine it's their own father calling for help.
We have seen the clip released today by Hamas of Keith Segal, and the physical and the mental situation of the hostages is deteriorating by the day. Please, Gantz, Eisenkot, we lost hope upon Benjamin Netanyahu. Please, do whatever you can to secure a deal as soon as possible.
Once again, Saturday night, thousands of Israelis took to the streets to protest against the government, against the war, and for a ceasefire deal that would see the return of at least some of the more than 130 hostages held in Gaza. Now Israel is reportedly willing to soften its demand for a ceasefire and is even putting the much-debated upcoming operation in Rafah on the table.
If we'll reach a deal, we will halt the operation. We will do whatever is required to bring the hostages back.
The pressure on the streets beginning to reach deep into the halls of parliament.
I will say that they have been increasing the amount of trucks that have been getting into Gaza. Now there's still challenges on the ground in getting it up into the north, but that's starting to happen, and the Israelis have started to meet the commitments that President Biden asked them to meet. This pier is now being constructed. It will take probably 2 to 3 weeks before we can really see it in operation. I mean, it's a fairly complicated procedure to get that in place, and we're working closely with the Israelis about how the operation of the pier would work.
All right, so your thoughts on that? I mean, Smotrich first.
He's such an easy target. I mean, look, it is yet another reflection of the political genius of Benjamin Netanyahu that he surrounds himself with the likes of Smotrich that has the otherwise unbelievable effect of making him appear sagacious and measured. Smotrich, I can also say, appears to be yet another case of the phenomenon whereby the shorter and the more fictitious an Israeli minister's own military experience was, the bigger the saber that they rattle.
Mm-hmm. We ask the world to commit to its obligations and acknowledge the state of Palestine. And after acknowledging the state of Palestine, only then can we sit down with Israel and negotiate on the borders. And only then can everyone enjoy full peace.
We're going to look at how we can solve the bigger problem in the context of Gaza, that is a real commitment to a two-state solution. That is a credible, irreversible path to a Palestinian state. That's the only reasonable and credible solution that guarantees us from not having to come back to this same situation 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
All right, Dan, your thoughts on that? I mean,
Look, as you know, I do agree that the only long-term solution for Israel that maintains its democracy and also its status as a Jewish majority state is indeed a partition. Now, whether that partition has to happen in the context of specific Palestinian independence, when we all know there never was an independent Palestine in the entire history of the Euclidean universe, is an open question. But yes, partition is necessary, and a Palestine.
With you in a second. We're going to turn to the north now, where violence has been escalating in the north near the border with Lebanon. An Israeli soldier was wounded by shrapnel from a barrage of rockets fired last night by Hezbollah. The IDF says its fighter jets have responded with airstrikes. Meanwhile, the French Foreign Minister, Stéphane Séjourné, is in Beirut today in a diplomatic push to end hostilities. We're now going to go live to I-24 News correspondent Zach Anders, who has been in the north all afternoon with the latest. Good evening, Zach.
Good evening. Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for an additional attack since we last spoke an hour ago. This is the third attack of the afternoon. It does not appear that there has been any reports of casualty or damage along the north, and all three attacks that have taken place today appear to have been on military sites. At least that's what Hezbollah is claiming. We are, again, over this holiday, it's been rather quiet, and the usual sources that update some of this information are observing the holiday. So it's a rather quiet day, all in all. The overnight injury to the IDF soldier, who is being described as an active duty soldier, not a reservist. A lot of the men and women that are up here on the northern border are reservists.
There are friction. I would say that most of the Lebanese people, the big majority, don't want a war with Israel. But Lebanese today is a dysfunctional state. You know, for more than 1 year, they have no president. And all these people who are prime minister and ministers have no power. Mm-hmm. The power, to my great regret, lays in the hands of the Hezbollah. The boss of Lebanon today is Nasrallah. It's so. It's not official. There are other forces. There are Christians. But their clout is much more limited than it was. You have also a big Sunni congregation in Lebanon. You don't hear from them. Right. You have Druze people in Lebanon. You don't hear from them. Hezbollah is the one to give the tone.
Dan, you want to say something?
Yeah, I obviously I agree with everything, and of course it's true, but what it is not is reasonable. This is craziness. That Israel can't attack back because it will be attacking Lebanon, or a population that has no control over the people that rule it, except that state of being the rulers is informal. And I have to wonder how long this can last until all the world's brain power doesn't figure out another way to handle it. And perhaps one thing that can be done is to end the fiction and to simply declare and to ask even the UN and the US and the EU to accept that the rulers of Lebanon are Hezbollah.
All right, thank you both so much. And it's like Groundhog Day every day. All right. Meanwhile, it shouldn't come as a total surprise, but anti-U.S. and anti-Israel rhetoric is ramping up in Iran. Here's more from a piece from CNN. The only Western reporter on the ground in Tehran takes a look at how the rhetoric brewing in the streets could impact military operations between Iran and Israel.
Iran's hardliners flexing their muscles, screaming death to America and death to Israel at Tehran's main Friday prayers. The staunchly conservative prayer leader saying the Islamic Republic will not back down.
Iran has warned it will take an even harder line towards the U.S. and towards Israel in the future, saying that if Israel attacks Iran or its assets one more time, the Iranians will strike back from their own territory.
Tensions in the Middle East remain at a boiling point after Iran launched a massive drone and missile attack against Israel in retaliation for the bombing of its embassy compound in Syria, killing several top Revolutionary Guard commanders. Israel, the U.S. and other allies managed to take down most of the Iranian drones and missiles, but Israel then hitting back with a limited strike against an airfield in central Iran. The hardliners flying massive Palestinian flags, ripping into Israel's operation in Gaza and the U.S.'s support for Israel. The message here, Iran is ready for a confrontation. In fact, we are even happy about this man says. We are praying day and night for a second and third attack. And he says, we've had these threats for a long time, but the difference is now the people are strong, the IRGC is strong, and the army is strong, and we have strong tools. And this cleric says if the Islamic Republic of Iran will have more conflicts in the future, it doesn't mean we are warmongering, we're just reacting to the bullies. But on the streets of Tehran, concern the current tensions could escalate and even turn into war. I believe the situation will get worse, this man says, as both sides are more combative, and in my opinion, it will lead to war and to calamity for people. And this woman says, we are definitely concerned, worried, but what can we ordinary people do about it? Iran's leadership says its military is ready for combat, even as they say war is not in their interest.